Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 2. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank all of you who have liked, shared, commented, and subscribed. Your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. And I'm excited. In this week's episode, I'm joined by my former athlete and former intern turned full-time strength coach and competitive weightlifter, Nick Aloi. Nick is currently the assistant strength conditioning coach for football and the head strength conditioning coach for wrestling at the United States Naval Academy. Prior to his time at the Yard, he's also had stops at Coastal Carolina, Muhlenberg College, as a grad assistant at Salisbury, and as an intern with the Detroit Lions. He's a 4-year football player, team captain, and NSCA All-American of the Year, who currently competes nationally in weightlifting through USAW. He's competed at both the university and under-25 championships, training for West Virginia Weightlifting team, and I'm excited to have him on today. With all that said, let's get into the game with Coach Nick Aloi. All right, hey guys, thanks for tuning in. I'm here with my good buddy, Nick Aloi. He's currently the assistant strength coach at the US Naval Academy, working with football and leading the wrestling team there. So we've seen each other in action a few times. He's also a national level weightlifter for the last 6 years and has been competing with West Virginia Weightlifting in the USAW. Hey Nick, appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Just another note, you said that our teams have competed against each other 2 times now, and I'm 2-0 in those competitions. So just wanted to reiterate that point.
I know. I remember those ones very vividly. Those are the ones I told my teams I really wanted, and well, you got the better end on both sides. So we'll have to wait for the third one.
Yeah,
best out of 5.
Hopefully we can get a couple more so we can see each other again in person.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm hoping for a best out of 5. I'd have to sweep 3 in a row, but we'd see what happens.
It'd be tough. Yeah.
So kind of going from there, we touched on a little bit, you're a competitive weightlifter, everything, but really what kind of got you started in the strength game? What was your intro to training and to sports growing up, and then everything leading up to the time that you actually been now a high-level weightlifter?
So it all started just with sports, playing sports, all that, from a very young age, and football was the main sport that I was kind of into, and that's where my training took place was for football. Leading up into high school, I went to one of those private facilities, and I just loved training. And I thought to myself, man, that'd be a sweet job to just be in a weight room, training, lifting, and that's kind of what sparked my interest into the strength and conditioning profession was training at that facility. So from there, just trying to look for schools where I can get, exercise science or kinesiology degrees. And Salisbury was one of those schools where I could do that and then also play football, which was another thing that I wanted to do in college. So I got the opportunity to do both, got an exercise science degree, played football, ended up interning there as an undergrad with strength and conditioning, working with a bunch of teams, and then eventually being a GA also for my last year of grad school there, working with football, women's lacrosse, tennis, track and field, kind of all over the place with that, and just getting a lot of experience with different sports and different teams. And as a GA over one of the summers, I did an internship at the Naval Academy with Brian Fitzpatrick, who was an assistant at the time, and who's actually my boss now. So I got the opportunity to do that in grad school, and then my first job out of grad school was at Muhlenberg College up in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I worked for Darren Thomas, who was an awesome dude. Basically just let me do whatever I want with all my teams. So that was great, basically said, here's your teams, do whatever you want. And then kind of just let me go. I helped him with football, and then I had a bunch of teams of my own, basically there from 6 in the morning to 8 at night, just training teams, training myself, living the life, the strength coach life.
Oh, yeah.
And then from there, went down to Coastal Carolina University, was there for 2.5 years, worked with football there, women's lacrosse, volleyball, beach volleyball. And then from there, back up to the Naval Academy last summer. And yeah, that's where I'm at now, working with football and heading wrestling.
Yeah, that's a lot of places you've been, and you talked about training, and you kind of easily put the two together. You transitioned right from football right into coaching and right into weightlifting and everything. And like, even when you put your timeline together, they overlap a lot. After your football career was done, I know you kind of, when we originally had everything going, you even dabbled in skeleton for a little bit, trying to prepare for that. But ultimately, why'd you want to continue to compete after college athletics? And then what kind of drove you towards picking weightlifting as the next stop?
Yeah, so like you said, after football, basically I was just trying to find some way to compete in something that involved like working out, lifting weights. So again, we tried the skeleton thing, which was fun. Never actually got to the combine or whatever, which I think still would have been fun to do, even if it didn't work out. But kind of just doing a bunch of different things. And part of that skeleton thing was, cleaning, snatching, training for that. And yeah, kind of got into that, I guess, as a result of trying to do that skeleton. And then, yeah, I think one day I just asked you for a weightlifting program, and then that's where it all started. And I enjoyed doing that. I like the technique of it. I think I would have been a better power lifter, just the way I'm built, but I think weightlifting is a lot more fun because of all the technique involved. So I guess as a football player, I was very technical. So as a weightlifter, I try to do the same.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you kind of talk about it, and you talked about Muhlenberg too, and everything, like that strength conditioning lifestyle where you're at work all the time, you're training, you're competing, and then all the technique that's involved now competing in weightlifting. What do you kind of see as some of those benefits, and how do you take your Olympic influences and involve that into your coaching? Are you a really big three, like snatch, jerk, clean with the most of your, predominantly all your teams, or how do you take your competitive and your training background and apply it to your program with your athletes?
Yes, I mean, all of my teams will do the Olympic list that they all have. Now, not all of them may not snatch. Most all of them will clean, and then everyone's going to squat. Part of that is, I think the Olympic lifts are one of the best things you can do in a weight room to train for a sport. But also I just like to coach them too. Honestly, it's just really fun to coach. Again, with the technique involved, it can be tough with bigger groups, but I mean, it's still a lot of fun adding that into the program.
Yeah, definitely. It's I enjoy doing it. I think with my sports, it kind of drifts a little bit away. I don't think my baseball guys are very good at any sort of clean, so we kind of avoid them. But I love the aspect of being able to add them in and do the barbell gymnastics movements and stuff. I think they're a great tool to add in, and especially with your experience, it makes it a lot easier when you're under the bar all the time coaching it. With that in mind, like, what are some of the benefits that you kind of see why you continue to train and compete in a strength sport? And what are some of those things that you can take away from yourself, like constantly being under the bar, that helps impact your athletes?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, having something to train for makes it easier to train. So if I didn't compete, I don't think it would be as easy to get up and start lifting. So I have competitions or goals in mind. It makes it a lot better for me to kind of get out there and lift. But just doing the lifts myself helps a lot, and coaching them too. You got to be able to know how to get into positions, know how things feel, so you can kind of talk athletes through it. If they're having problems in certain areas, maybe I had a problem in too. It makes it a lot easier if I've gone through and fix those things on myself to then go and, teach someone else how to do it. An example would be like the rack mobility. I've had problems with that. I still have problems with that if I don't keep my stretching up. But a lot of football players, wrestlers will have those rack problems, those shoulder tightness. And I've gone through tons and tons of stretches myself and found the ones that work best for me. And then I can try those on the athletes or see which one of those things that I've done could help them also.
Yeah, that's a big thing. It makes it a lot easier I think, to relate to your athletes when you're coming from a background as an athlete yourself. But I think it's even more important when you kind of continue to sharpen the sword and they see you getting under the bar and training and challenging yourself and working towards a goal. It just makes it seem like you have a bigger stake in the game and they understand more. And I know you and I are both pretty young, so we're not kind of old, crotchety old guys, strength coaches yet, where we can say back in the day. But I mean, we're still every year getting a little bit older than the players we're training. So it's nice to at least be able to say, hey, I can do that too. And we're kind of in this together. Kind of on that same topic, you took a very interesting, initial start. You went right from football to interning to being a GA at your alma mater at Salisbury. So that's a lot of times most people don't have that, but speak a little bit on how that transition was, because you went from being teammates and probably still living with some of your teammates to, in the matter of a day, now coaching them and instructing them on what to do. Like, how did you kind of handle that situation, being the same age, being a young strength coach, and then basically going from teammate to coach?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to that. I do think it made some things easier, but again, there was a little bit of a challenge, like you said. I had teammates who are now, my athletes, and then even some were older than me still. But I think what helped there is they've seen me in the weight room, they've seen me train, and just kind of the work I've put in. I think that helped them to maybe trust what I was doing and kind of how I was coaching. But also it makes it easier on me because I know everyone already. I've seen them all lift already. I've trained with them. I know all their names. I know more about them than a new coach would coming in. So that, in that essence, it was definitely made the transition a little bit easier to deal with.
Yeah. What kind of advice would you give for the same thing, even if it's not someone going at their alma mater? What would you say to a young strength coach that, like you said, some of the guys you were working with are even older than you? Like, where do you kind of, what do you do? Do you draw the line somewhere? How do you kind of approach that as a young coach? What would you say to them?
I mean, I definitely think there needs to be a line, but I don't think it has to be as low as you might think. You still want to have a good relationship with the athletes. I mean, really, you're kind of their friends, but at the same time, you have that authority over them where hopefully they respect you enough to listen to what you have to say. you shouldn't be like the asshole, I don't think, and just demand, and not really get to know your athletes, or, you know, crack a few jokes, or just talk to them like they're normal people. You know, you're not just the guy that's telling them what to do all the time. You've got to kind of build the relationships with them, and that's going to build some trust with them too. So hopefully they'll get to the point where whatever you say, they don't even have to question it. They just go ahead and do it.
Right. Yeah. It makes it even more unique, though, being at a service academy like you are, being at Navy. And a lot of people don't get the opportunity to work with military, and these guys are still now, these ladies and young adults are basically doing sports. They're doing high-level learning. They're doing all their military instruction and stuff like that. Most people are never going to be at Navy, Air Force, Army, or work in a tactical setting. Every place has its pros and cons, but what are some of the biggest things that you've kind of learned from working at the academy that other people could take and apply to either traditional university settings or just any sort of strength conditioning coaching?
I think the biggest thing is time. Like, we don't have a lot of time to do anything with the athletes. Like, I've talked to you before, we were talking wrestling and training and stuff, and kind of just asking how much time you had with them in season, and you were telling me like an hour 15 per session or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there like, man, I got 25 minutes 2 times a week to train these guys that are wrestling on the weekends. So just being super efficient in what we're doing and taking out all the fluff. I've had to learn that, how to do that. And I've kind of liked doing that because we get the main lifts in and basically that's it. Warm-ups are super short and they actually mean something. They're not just jogging around or doing some dynamic warm-up or whatever, like up and back on the field. It's a barbell warm-up. They're practicing their lifts while they're warming up, and they're doing mobility all intertwined in that to get that warm-up as short as possible and actually get some work out of it too. I mean, just going like one day might just be squat, barbell row, and that might be it, honestly, depending on how much squatting we're doing. Throw some cleans in the beginning there. And the cleans we do on the squat day, we're going to front squat those cleans to warm up for the squat. So once we get to the squat, we don't have to warm up for it. So
Right.
basically saving time there. Just things like that where one exercise can lead into the other so you don't have to warm up again. And just being as efficient as possible. Just kind of, once those main lifts are done, supersetting through everything else in the workout, or if you're waiting to squat, maybe you're overdoing neck or something. If you're not squatting, just someone's always got to be doing something in order for the workout to get done. I think that's probably the biggest challenge is the time of everything there.
Right. No, I like that. That's like you kind of mentioned, I do get a lot more time with my wrestlers. So, and at points in time, like I can definitely look at a few minutes where it's fluff, it's wasted,
Yeah.
but we have the time, so we use it. But I like what you talked about. Like, if you're confined to these 25 minutes, like you can only do what really matters, and we can't waste a second of it. And that's, I think anybody can take that and run with it, because that's a huge, important thing. Because even if you're not constrained to 25 minutes like you are, some people might be constrained to 40 or less than that, or only one day a week or something along those lines. So making sure that you're picking exercises, movements, whatever you prioritize as the most important thing needs to be what's in the program, which is awesome. Kind of going through with your coaching and with your competing, and there's no real way to balance the two. How have you been able to manage your training and been able to kind of coach at the same time? Is there ever an overlap or where one takes precedence?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely tough. I think coaching's got to be the number one. If there's a time where I'm training and maybe an athlete comes in and needs something, that my training has to go on hold to go help them. And I'm fine with that. I mean, that's how it should be. There's times where maybe, I'm going to go in and train on the weekend, and one of the athletes is like, hey, are you going to be around over the weekend? I want to try to get an extra lift in. I'm like, sure, I'm going to be in the weight room training from this time to this time. If you want to work out a little bit, come during those times. And then, they can do some things while I'm doing some things, and it kind of helps there. When normally if I wasn't training, I wouldn't be there, and they couldn't get that extra little bit in. Yeah, I mean, I think the athletes have to come first. I can't be training, while I have a team in there, or, tell someone that I can't help them because I got another set of squat or something. Like, that can wait. I can warm back up if I have to.
Right. No, that's exactly my idea. And I like when I don't like it all the time, but I do like when I get caught and my athletes come in and they see me training.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, if they're not doing anything crazy, they'll just sit down on the bench, have a conversation, or hey, just hop in with me for a second. I'll show them something different. It's the same thing with weekends, like you said. That's the perfect time. All the baseball guys love to come in. They know I'm getting it after it Saturday morning doing my strongman stuff.
Yeah.
And they know that they're coming in that day for the weekend series. They'll talk some shop with me, get their stuff in, get out, and then we just roll through like that. And it's honestly some of my favorite time because it's the only time you really get to maybe talk one-on-one with a guy, especially with you having limited amount of time with those players.
Yeah, I mean, that's another big thing too, is normally, like, let's say, like, if I was at Coastal, you get athletes coming by all times of the day, just walking in, saying what's up, grabbing a bar. I might sit down and talk for a little bit. Or like we'll be training out there, and then we'll get athletes come by and just talk to us. And, I get to tell them, hey, this is what a clean's supposed to look like while I'm doing cleans and stuff. But at the academy, you really don't get that because they're all in class all day. And if they're not in class, they're studying or taking a nap or eating or something. So you don't really get that time to kind of bond with them. So that is another difference. It's harder to build relationships. You don't see them as often, and you don't see them for as much time, really.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the hard things with that. They're pulled in so many different directions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I lived around the academy too. My dad worked there, and going to visit and seeing just their timetable. Sleep is the last thing they get, but it's their most important commodity, and they're usually only getting 4 hours of it on a good day.
Yeah, and the schedule's definitely rough. Definitely the only time they get to do homework is at night when they should be sleeping probably, but yeah, gotta stay eligible. So
exactly,
not much you can do.
Do you, with that in mind, do you have any resources or anything that you kind of mention to your players on their way out, since time is so important? Is there anything that you kind of give them or speak to them on that they can work outside of the time that you're allowed to work with them? Whether it's maybe books or someone to follow for more recovery protocols and things like that you kind of lean on?
For them, not really. I mean, if they come to me with questions, I can kind of point them in a certain direction. But I mean, I guess it kind of depends on what they're looking for. And really, I mean, they really don't have much free time to look into some of these things. So
right.
Maybe I'll just look up for them and let them know what they're wondering. But I always try to tell them about sleep and stuff and nutrition, just kind of in passing, asking them how much they slept, if they look sluggish, or if they ate anything. And you can usually get a conversation started there about how important sleeping is and how important eating is if they're not doing those things. But, sometimes they really can't. So, I mean, it's not much you can do.
Right.
There.
Yeah, and for the most part, your guys that you have there's a reason they got into the academy, and they're already probably pretty disciplined. So most of that stuff kind of just comes natural to them. You really don't have to hold their hand, which is probably one thing that most other strength coaches have to do a lot of times at different places.
Yeah, no, it's easy. A lot of things are a little bit easier dealing with the players and the athletes because of the discipline definitely is there. So really, usually you'll have a team where, someone's getting in trouble all the time, or maybe you have to discipline them or whatever. I mean, not much of that goes on with the academy. I mean, especially with the football teams, they're super disciplined. I think usually they're like the least penalized team in college football every year.
There you go.
And I mean, there's a reason for that.
Perfect. Hey, so just like kind of any training session, we're gonna finish this off with a good finisher. So I got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and potentially overtime. So okay. I'm gonna fire them off quick. You can answer them as quick as you want, but if you want to elaborate, I'll give you that too. You ready?
All right. I guess so. Yeah.
All right. So, hey, who's your biggest influence in strength conditioning, and then who's probably your biggest influence in weightlifting?
Man, biggest influence in strength and conditioning. I don't know. That's tough. I think there's so many people that have helped me, like that I know personally. I mean, Matt Nine at Salisbury was a big influence because he gave me a GA position, which basically started the whole career of this. Darren Thomas at Muhlenberg was a big influence because he kind of just let me do whatever, and I got to learn by doing. And my boss now, Brian Fitzpatrick, he had taught me a lot, like leading into my GA about training. I mean, he was probably the biggest influence on the programs I wrote early on at Salisbury and for the football team, just because I just came from there as an intern. But I mean, there's just so many people that I've learned from that it could be one of the biggest influences for me.
What about weightlifting? Who do you look up to?
Weightlifting. I mean, I like the Catalyst Athletics. I think that's probably one of my biggest resources there. The website, I always read their articles. I like the way he coaches, and I always watch their lifters and their videos and stuff. I'd say that's probably the biggest one on the weightlifting side. I think I've learned a lot from that site as far as lifting myself and then also coaching. He has that book that I've read also. I forget what it's called, but that was a good one.
Yeah, Greg Everett's stuff is awesome. I like watching it. So if you're not – on a day you're not competing or coaching, well, what do you normally found doing? What are some of your hobbies outside of this?
Well, recently I've gotten into kayaking and fishing during like the quarantine. Once they let everyone out like on their boats and water and stuff, I got a kayak and started fishing. So probably right now that's what I'm doing if I'm not coaching or training.
There you go. So if you weren't actually in the coaching profession, what would you be doing? And if you weren't weightlifting, you kind of mentioned before you'd probably fit a good power lifter, but what sport would you pick?
That's hard because I think about it all the time. Like, if I got fired, what would I do? I have no idea. Like, I really have no idea what I would do. I don't think I'm qualified to do anything else. So I don't know, maybe I'll work at like Walmart or something. I don't know. And if I wasn't a weightlifter, probably like powerlifting or something. I don't know. Powerlifting. What other sports could I do or compete at?
Yeah. So Walmart would be your dream job if you weren't
No.
strength conditioning. I want to clarify that.
Oh no, my dream job, if I wasn't strength and conditioning, I would probably be like a football coach. That side of the office, I guess.
That works. Well, okay, yeah. So it's Saturday. You're in lifting. What's your ideal training day? What's your go-to PR song or music? And then man. What's your post-training meal right after?
So first things first, if it's a Saturday, heavy Saturday training, I gotta pick the energy drink of the day. Usually like a Bang or Rain, something with at least 300 milligrams of caffeine to get me going.
There you go.
The music is gonna be some type of like EDM or dubstep music. One of those Pandora stations will be on. And the post-lift meal, I guess it depends on what I'm in the mood for, but it's going to be something that's not very good for me. I know that. And probably some beer as well.
That'll work. I think that's most people's on a weekend. All right. Well, I think you got overtime too. Then you could take your time on this one. What's your most valuable piece of coaching advice or training advice that you've received, and from who?
Most valuable piece of coaching or training advice. I think the best thing I remember would be kind of about recovery. And I was asked one time, like, when do you get stronger or when are you building muscle? And it's not while you're lifting weights, because you're just breaking yourself down. It's when you're not doing those things, when you're recovering. And I honestly can't even remember who said that to me, but I've taken that, and I thought that made a lot of sense, because I think my first answer to that question was, oh, lifting weights or something. And it's no, you're not getting stronger then. You're actually getting weaker. But once it builds back up while you're recovering, that's when you're getting stronger and all that.
Yeah, I think most people lose sight of that. I'll agree with that one for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, but Nick, I really appreciate you coming on the show, man. It's been awesome to see you and be coaching with you, and now getting to coach against you. Hopefully we'll get to actually have our wrestlers go head to head again and see where this long Nick versus Nick battle ends up in a few years.
Hopefully there's some more chances for you to get a win, but
yeah, for sure. Yeah, but thanks again, brother. It was great talking to you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Of course.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors, Cerberus Strength. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.